If you've ever felt like you're holding back from like a big leap or unsure on how to step into a challenge, today's conversation is for you. I'm Barb, and this is Barb's Fresh Eyes, my podcast where we help you and your business get unstuck by uncovering hidden dynamics and offering some new perspectives that hopefully spark some clarity and opportunity so you can really achieve your purpose at work and in life. I'm talking with Chris Marino, head of agency at Google Customer Solutions, about the incredible power of vulnerability and relationships. And Chris and I should know, I've known him for years, so you're really going to get the inside story with him. I didn't let him get away with anything. This is really a candid, real-world look at what happens when you dare to shoot your shot. And the foundation of inspiring others for Chris is building trust. This one's for leaders who want to find their courage and clear their path to getting unstuck. All right, let's jump in. I'm so excited to have you on my podcast. I want to remind you of my very first bobblehead that Chris Marino designed many years ago. I haven't had that short of a haircut in a long time, because we really have had a very close history on working. So thank you so much for joining this podcast.
Barb, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor and a privilege to be with someone who's made such a big difference in my life, both personally and professionally. So thrilled to be here. I feel like your podcast is years late. If podcasts were a bigger thing years ago, I feel like we would have gotten started, but I'm glad we have Bobble Barb as a good reminder of all we've done together.
Yes. And I want to start by really thinking about your journey. And let's start with what you're most proud of and why.
Yeah, I think the thing that I'm most proud of when I think back about my career is the difference that I've made in other people's lives and the followership that I've created over time. And I think back to, I look at my team right now at Google, and many of these people have either worked for me directly at other companies. In some cases, they've worked for me at American Express and Bloomberg, and now Google. And then many of them have worked with me, whether I was their client or I was working with them in a consultative capacity. And so to me, just having the ability to make a meaningful difference in someone's life is what actually drives someone to want to run through a wall for you, right? And I certainly felt that way working for you. And it taught me a really valuable connection of when you have a leader who is personally and professionally invested in you, that is an enormous differentiator. It inspires great work. And so that's what I always think about is how do I inspire people to get the best out of them?
So that why that matters is very obvious and self-apparent. But tell me the how, Chris. How did you figure out that the power of inspiring people was a path to success?
Yeah, the first is I look at myself, right? I always look at, as you grow as a leader, I'm always looking at people that I've worked for or worked with. And I think I always try and model myself after what does great look like? And conversely, what did not so great look like? And I think about people like yourself who made me feel, one, just really well respected, right? I always felt like I had a voice. And when you have a voice and you feel comfortable to share your perspective, transparency is critical, right? And so I think I look at leaders that I've had and I say, what were those things that they did that made me feel great? What were the things where maybe it was a really tense environment, right? And like stress and pressure didn't actually yield the best out of me. Maybe that's not the best way to get the most out of people. I think leadership, the reality is I find that there isn't one general mantra. I find you kind of have to adapt it based on person. And so I look at my experiences. I get to know the people that are working for me. I look to understand what motivates them. And then I try and be the leader that they need at the moments then they need it in. And sometimes you need different things depending on where you are in your journey and life cycle. And so I try and adapt my style to the person, but also to the situation.
I love that. I'm kvelling, Chris. You know, that's a Yiddish word. That means I'm just so excited and proud and happy to hear you say that. That's amazing. So you said I learned from leaders who really did it well and from leaders who didn't do it so well. And I'm pretty sure like I fall in both buckets. But I would love to hear about like getting unstuck and those moments that this kind of attitude about inspiring others was a pathway for you to get unstuck.
I think, one of the most interesting moments for me in terms of a growth opportunity was when I actually transitioned from working for you from a chief of staff into a digital role, right? And I remember going into this role, I was leading social media strategy for American Express. I had no experience leading social media strategy, right? At the time, I barely even had a social media presence. And I remember you telling me digital was the future. Good choice, right? Glad I invested in that, and that's become a subject matter expertise for me. But you said what you do have is you deeply understand the business. You understand what matters to the business, and if you can connect what is right now living in a very siloed manner at a moment where this area is being reimagined, you can have a really big impact because it was really unclear what social was actually driving for the business. It was a fuzzy topic. And so I transitioned into this leadership role. And I think, some of the first things that I did was I was really clear and vulnerable. I was not hired because I was a digital expert by any means, right? I was hired because there was a greater desire to measure the business impact that media was driving. The second thing that I did was I surrounded myself with people who were really deep experts in the area. And that meant, it takes a lot of courage to go into an agency meeting and say, hey, I actually need the 101 for, how this business works. And I may not know it now, but rest assured, I'm going to do everything I can to drive this program forward.
So wait, Chris, I think this leading with vulnerability, like this is a dog barking moment because it seems very important to me. So how did you get comfortable doing that? Like that's can feel hard and uncomfortable.
It's hard and it's uncomfortable. And I think it's the most important thing to getting unstuck, because I believe that everybody, when you start a new job, is feeling vulnerable. Whether they show it or not is another thing. And I think that there are moments in a job where you can ask for the 101. And then there are moments in a job where it is far too late to ask for the 101. And for me, I've always found that when you do so in the beginning and you don't come in with a predisposed notion of the team, right? And like what you think, people sometimes don't want to know, like day one, you've got a whole vision and you want to recreate everything this team has done. And everything they've driven for the business feels lost, right? So really learning to respect the work that's been done, getting the perspective on how to contextualize where they are in the business, and then combining your own point of view with that over longer periods of time, I think is really important. So I always try and bring that approach because the leaders that have done that with me, I felt really valued early on. And I felt like I was actually a part of their onboarding journey. And I was a trusted advisor to them. And that's something that's really important. And anytime I onboard a new leader, I want to be the trusted advisor. I want to go 10 steps out of my way to make sure they feel like I can be that to them. Because that's how you build long-term relationships.
So let's talk about the power of long-term relationships because it's come up a couple of times for you. Like people seem to follow you wherever you go, Chris. What has that done for you from a career perspective as well? My listeners want to know about career perspectives, I think, as well.
I mean, I'll give an example of my own long-term relationship. When I was in college and I was looking for an internship, I had no experience in the corporate world. And in fact, my parents had no experience in the corporate world. And it was daunting. And I always have believed in the power of network. And I've always believed in the power of shooting my shot. So what did that look like, right? I went to a all boys Catholic high school in Queens called Monsignor McClancy. when I was a senior, I had someone named Steve Squarey come in and speak to our class all about climbing the corporate ladder and coming from a very similar background and growing up in the same neighborhood. And sure enough, right, Steve Squarey was actually the CIO of American Express at the time. And when I was thinking about an internship, I distinctly recalled that presentation that Steve gave. I thought about how do I get in touch with him. I went on to a high school alumni networking website and emailed Steve Squarey to his AOL email address. I didn't expect a response, to be quite frank, right? But my email was very much like, I remember this speech really stood out to me. I've always admired American Express as a brand, and would love to have the opportunity to get a shot at this company. Sure enough, Steve did respond 2 weeks later, apologizing for the delay. The first time I ever was at American Express was on the 51st floor of the building, which if you've been at the building, that is the executive floor. And so it looks very different than most other floors. And I remember sitting in the executive library shaking, having just bought a suit with my mom in Macy's, right? And saying, who did I just reach out to? And so in many ways, I interviewed with Steve Squarey at American Express. Of course, I had subsequent interviews, but I was able to get an internship. And that was a door that was open. And I didn't just stop the door at that, right? I actually was like, how do I maintain this relationship? And in fact, I met with Steve Squarey quarterly, even until he became the chairman and CEO of the company, right? And so I think always looking to build that relationship. And it was interesting because I always think about mentorship and I'm sort of like, what can I do for this person? And there's very little that someone like me could have done for Steve, but I could have actually given him a pulse on the company as someone that was new, just starting their career and really eager to grow with a brand and a company. And I spent 9 years doing that at American Express and meeting with him. And in fact, just 2 months ago, I was back at American Express and having a conversation with him where he was saying how proud he was of how far I've been able to come. And so, for me, everything comes back to the power of relationships. Because if you can cultivate meaningful relationships over time, that's actually what opens a door. And people start to appreciate your brand, what you're known for, and they think of you when opportunity comes up. And whether you're actively seeking opportunity or not, I always want to be top of mind on people's lists when they think of who is great digital talent.
I think that's so funny, Chris. I remember people saying, "Oh, where's Chris going?" I'm like, "Oh, he's going to have a chat with the CEO. He'll be back." Is that
Which,
all?
by the way, I was embarrassed by, of course, right? I remember going up to the 51st floor and he had a favorite bakery in my neighborhood and my parents were like, you got to bring him bread. And then I would bring bread and I would bring cookies for him and for his team. Those were embarrassing moments, right? Where I was going to 51 because I never, for me, I never really wanted people to know that I had that relationship because to me, that was the power of that, right? Is like having this person build this connection, but not necessarily outwardly make everyone aware. Because I never wanted any opportunities because of who I knew. I wanted opportunities because, right, of what I delivered. Yeah. And so I always viewed that as a person who could give me a very unique perspective, but never really wanted too many people to know it. And just now, only over the past couple of years, when I left Amex, have I more so outwardly started speaking about it.
But I'm going to challenge you a little on that, Chris, because I think there was another element to why you didn't want people to know. And it might be a little bit of this imposter syndrome. Was that part of it? Okay, so talk to me a little bit about that and how you are overcoming that.
Yeah, I think imposter syndrome is such a big part of any job that I've ever taken. And in fact, it was Steve Squarey who wrote to me in an email and said, even when he takes a job, he's nervous and has imposter syndrome. And so I think, anytime I've ever started a new role, no matter how much I knew the subject matter, whether it is acclimating to a new company, whether it is acclimating to new cross-functional stakeholders, whether it is, rethinking how to get things done at places, which, by the way, is very different. I always lean into vulnerability, right? Like that is the way that I have succeeded in many ways because I'm very clear about what I do know and I'm really good at. but I'm also very clear about what I don't know and what I want to get to learn over periods of time. And over communication is often, I think, like one of the keys to success. So when I come in, I want to make it very clear of I don't know XYZ. Here's why I think I was hired. Here's what I plan to do over the next 90 days. Here's the role that the team will play in helping me to achieve that, right? And similar to you, Barb, I always like to start with the customer because when I first started, even at Google, right, I wanted to go and there's always the internal perspective, but then there is the external perspective. And there's so much power in getting out of the building, as we always said at American Express, and spending time with the people that experience our brand and our product every single day and can paint a very different view for what that looks like. And sometimes it's very different from the internal perspective that may be drawn. So I always think about how do I onboard to a new place in terms of people, in terms of process, and in terms of culture. And a lot of that people component is also inward and outward.
Okay, you would have been gotten into big trouble if you hadn't brought up the customer piece, by the way.
Of course. I mean, we did launch customer first training together globally at American Express, right? So we had to.
You had to bring that in because it is the key to success for a lot of people. It certainly has been for me. But when you think about your success, we've talked a lot about onboarding and starting jobs, but you also have grown tremendously within roles and really developed your leadership. When you think about that, like what is that core belief or value or trait that's really kept you going? And I know you've spoken about vulnerability, but is there anything else that you feel like really has been that anchor that you always connect to?
Yeah, well, similar to you, I've always liked to be the change agent, right? And I think being the change agent is really hard and it's really lonely. And, I'll give you an example of, when I first joined Bloomberg, it was an incredible opportunity for me because I'd spent 9 years at American Express. I learned what great marketing that was well resourced and well invested in looked like. And Amex was a company that marketing was just so deeply ingrained in the fabric and the DNA of the company that the impact was really well understood. When I went to a company like Bloomberg, right, that impact, frankly, was not as well understood. And I joined specifically on the consumer subscription side of the business. And I was hired to do digital acquisition, but I had an entirely different vision for what I could do. And in fact, I built growth marketing because when I looked at the business, we were largely acquiring new customers based off of the brand equity we had, which there sometimes can only go so far, right? Mm-hmm. But we were also winning with offers. And so I really wanted to build a full funnel marketing engine, everything from brand to demand. I wanted to build a content team to make sure we were not only reaching the right person at the right time, but we had the right message that was going to drive the desired outcome. And I wanted to build a MarTech structure or foundation for how could we use data offsite at scale, and how can we actually measure the impact of what marketing was driving. That is a very lofty goal. Right? At Amex, we had many different teams that were doing that one job. In fact, that was the reason I wanted to go to a company like Bloomberg was to build it. And that was tremendously overwhelming because I was going into areas like MarTech where I did not have the subject matter expertise. And at an Amex, I was maybe consulted, right, on these types of decisions. At Bloomberg, I was now the owner of what was the modern MarTech stack going to look like, which meant CEO and CFO meetings and board meetings and all of these different things where people are now looking at you as the de facto expert. And so I have always spent so much time, and even within, as I got into Bloomberg, I built a personal advisory board, right, of people I can go to at different companies that had done this before. And you need that sounding board, right? Bringing in the right agency partners who are going to help you go on that transformation. Spending a lot of time at industry events and thinking about what great looks like and what is the right way to challenge the status quo and bring that back into a way that's going to land at the company. And so, I mean, my success, I think, is largely driven to the fact that I always want to drive impactful change. I think the getting unstuck piece and what's really hard is when you're driving change at a place that doesn't see what you see, you've
Yeah.
got to bring everyone along on that journey. And it's not always so easy to do that.
No, and you're probably flying way ahead and waiting for them to kind of catch up a little.
Very much so. And it takes time, and you have to bring the right people along. You have to build the right advocates, and you have to kind of win by the culture that the company lives by.
So when you're doing this, it's people, 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 people. It's your team, it's your advocates, it's your support network, it's your agency partners. So the one thing that I think makes these things work together is trust. And you're so good at building trust. Chris, what is your secret? Especially in such a fast moving world, like we don't have a lot of free time to build trust. What do you do?
I think building trust starts with getting to know the person, getting to know what success looks like for that person, and helping that person understand that you are going to be there for them to drive their goals. Right. And you are not looking to build a kingdom. You're not looking to go off and do your own thing. Like, you are a steward of the business. And when they win, you win. And when you can connect what winning looks like for you back to the enterprise vision and goals, that's where you really drive the greatest impact in my mind. But you also build trust through moments that are really challenging. And you may go through those moments with a partner. And once they see that you really have their back, like, a lot of the way I try and do that tangibly is, maybe we get a project off of the ground, right? And you're celebrating the success. I'm going to celebrate the person who helped partner with me on that initiative in such a big way, because I want them to know that I deeply value what they do. And when we win together. It was not, Chris did this project, right? It was, we collectively did this, and it could not have been done without them. And I think when they see their own profile being elevated through an accomplishment, because the reality is you got to win with everybody. You can't win on your own. That's when people are more willing, I think, to commit, is when they see that they're really appreciated and respected as a part of that journey.
And I think what you're saying too, Chris, it doesn't happen just at the end. It happens throughout the journey.
100%. It happens all throughout the journey. I think at any big company I've ever worked at, you've got to build consensus. And you have to bring people along, because everybody has a boss. And so your key partner most likely needs to bring their boss along on that journey. And the way to do that is really through them, right? Because everyone has to commit resources. Everyone has to commit capacity. Everyone has to make an ongoing commitment. And so celebration is the milestone, but giving them reasons to believe throughout the journey is really important.
That's great. That's great. Okay, Chris, I really want to know if there's one mindset shift or small action to help our people listening to get unstuck. What would that one thing that you would say to them, go do this today? What would that one thing be?
Always shoot your shot, right? Like, I mean, for me, that is the one thing that I've always done throughout my career, whether it's an email to Steve's query, right? Whether it was a note to someone who worked at Amex who went to Bloomberg to say, hey, I think I can help you with this. Whether it was building a relationship with one of the managing directors at Google, who I was their client, right? And sending a note to them saying, hey, I'm thinking about what's next. Our business is very relationship driven. And so I always try and shoot my shot, but through the lens of how can I actually help you and your business in an impactful way, and put myself out there, right? You got to put yourself out there, because for one yes, it outweighs 10 no's every single time. And I think about my career, and if I had not done that outreach, I wouldn't be where I am today. And so be vulnerable, take your shot, do so thoughtfully, right? Curate the message to the right person, and make sure you're in service to what they are trying to achieve. And if you can do that, I think that will make a really big difference. But I think a lot of people, they're very fearful of the no, but you got to lean into the power of the yes.
I love that. And I feel like I am a beneficiary of that. Like you found me more than I found you, I think, in that job. And it was fantastic. I wouldn't have had the experience I had without you. It was amazing.
It was amazing. It was a pivotal moment.
It was amazing. I think you got a little stalky at one point, but I think we
Information is power, you know?
Yeah. Like Chris showed up in my office with, I think he had a picture of my wedding announcement or something. I was like, oh, this guy is doing his homework. This was so fantastic. I loved your openness, and your stories are amazing and purposeful. I really feel like we can be offering wisdom to my listeners on this journey. And I'm just so grateful for you for joining.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, Barb. And I hope that we can have even a small impact on a few people, and we can build the next generation of folks that will be on this, because that's what it's all about. It's inspiring the next generation and being a voice of positivity in a world that sometimes has many challenges and hurdles to overcome. So thanks.
A huge thank you to Chris Marino for that really fantastic conversation. I'm walking away with a lot to think about, and I hope you are too. Now, for your start today, something you can do from this conversation right now to get started on your path to unstuckness. Chris shared so many gems, but the one that truly anchors this episode is his philosophy of always shoot your shot. He showed us the power of reaching out with vulnerability and tailoring your message to genuinely be of service to what others are trying to achieve. So take a minute to reach out to somebody today. Now, go for it. Don't be afraid of the no, and lean into the power of the yes. Whatever challenges you're navigating, don't overcomplicate it. Start here with the courage to shoot your shot, and always keep leading with fresh eyes. If you found value in this conversation, please hit that follow button wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss future episodes of Barb's Fresh Eyes. And if you know another leader who needs that fresh perspective to get unstuck, please share this episode with them. Your support helps us reach more incredible leaders like you. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time on Barb's Fresh Eyes.